Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our Entitled People. In today's episode, Guy at a gas station. My grandpa's entitled children hid his death and tried to keep my nana from her own husband's funeral. Thanksgiving without leftovers isn't Thanksgiving. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Guy at a gas station. So I'm at a small gas station filling up my car and I go to the register to grab a drink. There's a guy who looks like he's in his 40s but apparently is a lot older. When the cashier asked to see his ID for the smokes he was buying, he decided to go on a rant about how he was 55 years old and shouldn't have to show it. The cashier said she needs to see everyone's ID, but he just keeps ranting. After a while, the guy just gives up and starts walking away. When he sees me, he says, "Can you believe this crap?" I replied that she wasn't willing to break the rules and risk her job. "Yes, I can." He goes red in the face and grumbles, "Your whole generation has no idea what respect is." And in one of the few clever moments of my life, my instant reply was, "That's because we never saw your generation show any. We're just following your example." He looked like someone has slapped him, kinda dazed and confused. Then he just walked away and drove off. Not a long or overly interesting story, but it was one of the few times I had a clever retort ready on the spot, so I wanted to share. I'm clapping. The job thing is right. First of all, if the cashier asks everyone she can't be accused of bias. Second, it's obvious a rule. I work a few days a week at a very busy and large gas station / convenience store. I'm 52. I work there for something to do and keep me moving and kind of my exercise. We card everyone, no matter what age. It's the law here. Unfortunately, it's not just my generation that gets offended and wants to yell and rant at us. Even 20-somethings do this. I get carded everywhere here, and I look nowhere close to 21, it's the norm. I don't understand why people act this way and think it's such an inconvenience to be carded. Also, we get checked by the state with underage people trying to buy beer or cigs to see if we ID. If we don't, we get fired and can be fined $10,000 personally. I appreciate you taking up for the cashier. Working retail is a tough job. I worked at a gas station for a while, and one day just after 5 p.m. as people are getting off their normal shifts, this guy walks in who I've served maybe half a dozen times in the last 10 days, and since we're in a bit of a rush, I'm just going through the motions to get through everyone as fast as possible. I don't even look up as I scan his tall boy of Natty Light and I say, "Can I see your ID please?" like I had for the 15 people before him since I'm in full robot mode. I bagged the beer and finally look up at him to see this angry scowl staring daggers at me. "You're really asking me for that? You think I look under 21? I'm 52 years old, I don't need to show you my ID. I don't even have my ID." I just stare at him and shrug and say, "Yeah, sorry man, but legally, if I ask, I have to see it. I could lose my job. The store could lose its alcohol license. Unless you've got it in your truck, I can't serve you and I gotta get to the rest of the line. Can I help you with?" He proceeded to double fist gorilla slam the counter 2 to 3 times and walks out the door. Never saw him again. Right behind him, one of my everyday regulars who's like a haggard 45 and worked as a cook at the restaurant across the street handed me his nightly 6-pack and his ID and says, "You ain't getting no trouble from me, boss." We both got a decent laugh out of it. How did it feel to have the right reply right then and not 5 hours later after replaying it constantly in your head? Like freaking magic. No idea how it happened. That's because we never saw your generation show any. We're just following your example. Haha, so true, I loved this. You made my day. Congrats OP. Old people tend to be entitled just because they absolutely believe that age gives you more rights than others. Rules aren't done to make us happy, but everyone follow them, and doesn't matter if you're 15 or 60, you must follow them. Do you think this guy turned into an a-hole at 50? He probably has been an a-hole for a long time that made it to 55. My grandpa's entitled children hid his death and tried to keep my Nana from her own husband's funeral. This is a story that happened a very long time ago, when I was around 19 years old. But I still haven't gotten over what a strange experience it was. My grandfather died when I was just a baby. When I was older, my Nana married a new man, a widower, who I called Grandpa Walt. He was the only maternal grandfather I knew, so I considered him my family. I didn't know this during the decade I knew him, but his kids from his previous marriage did not feel the same about my Nana. They did not believe in remarriage and considered her the most evil person in history for tempting their father from his vows to their deceased mother. They refused to see him in the home that my Nana owned, so when he got older and had difficulty leaving the house on his own, they mostly just stopped seeing him for years. He had never mentioned his kids, so I knew nothing about them. Eventually, he started getting bad enough that prolonged hospital stays were getting more frequent, and he needed to be in and out of full-time care. Whenever he was in the hospital, she would visit him until he could return home. They had been snowbirds, spending winters in Florida and summers in Michigan, but because of his health, they had not been able to go to their Florida home in many years. They decided that she would go down for a week or two to make sure the home was okay, and start the process of selling it before its value dropped from lack of maintenance while he was safely in full-time care with staff they had known and trusted for years. Then they could use the money from the sale for his care. I went to visit him the day after he left, to make sure he was doing okay. His son and daughter were there. It was the first time I had ever seen them. I had barely even been aware of their existence, but I figured out who they were from context. I said hello and tried to introduce myself. They pretended as though I was invisible, and they hadn't heard anything. Like a child would do during a game when they pretend a sibling is a ghost. I awkwardly sat in a chair. They proceeded to stand there for over an hour, talking right in front of me to Grandpa Walt about how evil my Nana was. That she would abandon him in some dirty hospital, it was actually quite nice, and run off spending all his money partying in Florida like a gold-digging hussy. And how they hoped he would remember that when it came to his will. It should be noted that my Nana, while by no means wealthy, had a lot more money than he did, and all of their property was hers from decades before she ever met him. She was also an elderly woman with a hip replacement who used a walker. You know, the kind with yellow tennis balls on the legs, so she was in no conditioning to be partying in Miami or whatever they thought she was doing. He never once responded. He just stared straight ahead with glazed eyes. I wasn't sure if he even heard anything. He was not looking very well, but I knew he always had his ups and downs. So I didn't imagine anything was unusual. I was flabbergasted. Looking back, I wish I had spoken up. But I was a teenager, in a hospital room full of sick and dying people, and I didn't know how to fight back without causing a huge scene. Eventually, I just took a brief pause in their rant to stand up and tell Grandpa Walt that I had to go, and that we all loved him and his wife would be home soon after she took care of the house issues. The entitled son and daughter spoke to me for the first time, telling me I didn't need to come back because they would be there for him, and I was not his family. I rushed to my parents' house and told them what had happened, and they filled me in on their issues. And it seemed like even if they seemed awful, I knew it wasn't my place to try and keep them from their father. So I stayed away, and gave them time to catch up and hoped that when I wasn't there, they could actually catch up and figure out their relationship. A few days later, my Nana got a very strange call from the hospital. A nurse that she knew very well from Grandpa Walt's hospital called her and asked how she was. Nana said fine. The nurse then awkwardly asked, "Do you know?" My Nana asked, "No what?" and the woman broke down. Grandpa Walt had been dead for 24 hours. His son and daughter had forbidden the hospital from contacting my Nana, and said they would let everyone know about the funeral arrangements. I have no idea what weird loophole caused higher-ups at the hospital to follow along with this, but his nurse sensed something was up and took a risk of calling to make sure my Nana knew. She did not. None of us did. They were attempting to hide his death and hurriedly hold a funeral before any of us found out. The nurse let us know where and when the funeral was taking place. Nana called all of us on the way to the airport to let us know. We started the phone tree for our whole family, and soon after she was back and we were all on our way to the funeral. The look of rage and disgust we got when we walked into my own grandpa's funeral, that my Nana got for walking into her own husband's funeral, was terrifying. They glared angrily and you could see that they wanted to scream and throw us out, but decided not to cause a scene. Instead, his daughter walked up and grabbed a fruit basket off the table. She announced that she was putting it in her car, and if any of her guests wanted fruit, they could ask her and she would go to the car to get it. Because she didn't want just anyone eating her fruit. The son and daughter gave speeches about how their father was finally in heaven, back with his one true love, their mother, and finally free from those who tried to tear their love apart. The staff of the funeral home eventually clued into the weird dynamic and found a way to put my Nana's car in the front of the procession when neither of Grandpa Walt's kids were looking, just to give her a brief moment of respect. She was pissed, but there was nothing she could do. These people thought their own opinions on the definition of "till death do us part" entitled them to hide my Nana's husband's death from her, hold their own funeral, and surely they spent days pressuring their father to cut her out of his will. I wish I could have seen their faces when they found out that none of the property they were salivating over was owned by him. It was a terrible, painful day for her to have to fight her way into her own husband's funeral. I was very sad, but I could not help but laugh at the fruit basket thing. It just came out automatically. It was the saddest, most petty, most evilly pathetic power grab I had ever seen. If that was the funeral, I can only imagine the shenanigans to get their hands on the death certificate and the will. I wasn't involved in any of that, but I can only imagine. My Nana is gone now, too, so I don't know what she went through. Good for you fighting for your Nan. I would like to hear an update at a later date. My family and I are currently in a fight over family property that my deckest mom's partner is trying to keep for himself. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry you and your family had to go through that. His kids need to get over themselves. I hope once they realize they didn't get anything, it made their actions more clear to them. They genuinely need therapy. It sounds like they never properly healed from their mother's death. Not that there's a right or wrong way to heal from death, but not even death is an excuse to repeatedly attack and hurt others. Again, I'm sorry this happened to you. Thanksgiving without leftovers isn't Thanksgiving. No family near for me or any of my close group of friends, so every year we celebrate the holiday meals together. One friend in particular likes to host, and the rest of us contribute. My contribution this year was a pumpkin cheesecake and Waldorf salad. As the hosting couple intended to leave the next day for a week-long retreat, and another of the group would be house-sitting for their dogs and cat, we arranged for my spouse and me to come over the next evening for a Turkey Day reprise with the leftovers. But other than the cheesecake and Waldorf salad, which I ended up taking home, I got no more leftovers, so no turkey sandwiches, no tetrazzini, none of the usually enjoyed leftover dishes. The house sitter kept it all except the 2 plates my spouse and I ate the day after Turkey Day. That's perfectly okay, but I miss having leftovers. It doesn't feel like Thanksgiving without leftover turkey and dressing. I'm thinking of getting a turkey breast in boxed dressing and instant potatoes just for my hubby and me. I feel entitled. Are you outing yourself as an entitled person? I'm glad I'm not the only one who thought this. I thought I was crazy for a second. Wait, so you didn't host? You didn't bring most of the food, but you were going to go over to the host's house while they were gone to take their leftovers, and you're pissed that someone else got to it first? Do I have that right? But I made sure to take home my leftovers so nobody else could have any. Gorgeously clueless. I feel entitled. At least you're admitting it. But, seriously, the easy way to combat this is to make your own leftovers. It sounds excessive, but it honestly helps ease those nerves when you don't get your traditional leftover sandwich. That's what my family has called it. I forgot what that restaurant in the airport in Philly called it. If I spent Thanksgiving at someone else's house, we would always make a small turkey on the Saturday afterward. That way, we had our leftovers. We went to the church's Thanksgiving dinner. I brought about 4 dozen deviled eggs and a huge ham. Guess what I brought home? My empty fancy egg platter, and my empty fancy turkey day meat platter. According to the OP, I was robbed. Funny, I don't feel robbed or that I was owed leftovers. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.